All right, guys, she is the Vice President of Consumer Engagement at NBC Sports Group. She is joining us here on the podcast, Business Social. Lyndsay Signor joins us. Thanks so much for the time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so I always ask a random question to kick things off. I know on Twitter, your bio says you're a nervous Pittsburgh sports fan. So I got to get your opinion. What side are you on this Le'Veon Bell madness?
Oh my goodness. It's tough because as a fan, you love Le'Veon Bell. He's so fun to watch. He's really a unique running back, but also as a fan, you're like, this is not ideal. I think my biggest the biggest thing for me is right now the Steelers are not looking great anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think it's because Le'Veon Bell's not on the field. I think it does make his case better that they are not looking great.
Yeah.
But I also think Connor's a really good running back. I think a lot of teams would love to have someone like him. What I go back and forth with is if Le'Veon Bell sits out the whole season, I don't know that he's going to get the money he's looking for from a team having not played a full season.
Yep.
And I totally understand you don't want to play for a team and get hurt and then lose your chances. But at the same time, I mean, he's in Miami having a great time. Even if he comes back, week 10, I just think the less he's on the field, the less valuable he's going to be to a team. And at this point, I don't know that many teams that have $15 million sitting around
for a running back.
Pay him for a running back this year. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely, from his perspective, a gamble. I think the Steelers have put the offer on the table they're willing to spend, and now it's just hopefully the Steelers figure out their running game because it's not great.
I was just surprised, and I'm sure, you've followed sports your whole career too. Like, I've never seen a locker room turn. Usually they always say let a guy don't get involved in people's money type thing. And you have to understand kind of where he's coming from. But the whole offensive line is like, F you, screw you. This is over. It's just interesting.
It's not a good look. You can look either way too, because I don't know that we fully understand what's going on behind the scenes either. I think contract negotiations are a thing that most players stay out of, but it's also not a great look if you come back and your offensive line is irritated with you. I think they are pretty important to a running back. But no, I think the Steelers they've had a lot to say. The players have had a lot to say in the past couple of weeks and not a lot of play on the field to back it up. So I think this week in Tampa is going to be, they cannot be whatever it is, 2-1 tie. That's not a good look. So I think hopefully they get their acts together a little bit, but it doesn't even matter when they're good. Like, I think most Steelers fans, Pittsburgh fans in general, never think that anything's going to go their way. And so even if everything was great and they were 2-0 and Le'Veon Bell's on the field, I think everybody would be worried about losing to Cleveland. So
especially with all the success all the success that Philadelphia's had right up the road, like the last 5-6 years across all sports. But what's your background there? Did you grow up out in Pittsburgh or?
I was actually born in central Pennsylvania. Married a guy from Pittsburgh.
Nice.
My family, both my parents went to Penn State, so I actually grew up in North Carolina, so I've been a little bit disconnected from PA, but my entire family's there. My parents, grew up there and stayed there for a long time. So, then marrying a Pittsburgh native, it just sort of solidified.
By the way, is Phillip Rivers the best athlete that come out of NC State?
I think you could go between.
He's a Hall of Famer. The numbers back it up.
Coach Cower was there.
That's right.
Russell Wilson also.
Yeah, that's true too.
Also there. I actually was in school when Phillip Rivers was our quarterback.
Okay.
Which is pretty cool. We actually had a really pretty good run there with him. But I think it's probably arguable between the two of them in terms of the football franchise anyway.
You know that we're based obviously out here in San Diego, and when the Chargers moved to LA, he refused to move to LA. So he drives this huge Sprinter van every day to practice, and he has 6 kids or something. So he's living the life.
He had a few kids when we were in college. So I think he has a pretty big family at this point.
Big family.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, first of all, congrats again on the promotion recently.
Thank you.
I know we talked about that a little bit offline, but you've moved from senior director now to vice president of consumer engagement. So can you give the audience a little bit of a background of how your role has changed and now kind of what you oversee day to day?
Yeah, so my role really dramatically changed about, let's see, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Jenny Storms, who is our chief marketing officer, came from PepsiCo. At that time, I was senior director, I think, of social media marketing. So my role was completely overseeing the social team, the social strategy, all of that jazz. When she came in, she took about a year to sort of take a look at the group. And she reorganized us to really focus more on the properties that NBC Sports carries from a marketing perspective and less on function. So I was head of social. There was someone that was a head of digital marketing, consumer marketing, partnerships. And so what she essentially did was kind of consolidate a little bit and have certain people oversee the sports themselves and all of the marketing that goes into it. So with that, for me, came overseeing marketing for the NFL, NASCAR, the Olympics, and I think that was it. That sounds not like it's not a lot, but I think that was it at the time.
Keeps you busy.
And then I was sort of this kind of unicorn in that I did actually keep my social role. So social media rolls into larger marketing, and we're very kind of organized based on our folks focusing on single sport. But social is such an interesting world that keeping the team together, having some oversight over the social strategy, because it is a little bit separate from an overall marketing strategy, kind of just giving social folks to each individual property didn't allow the teams to collaborate. And so I sort of have this two-pronged job that is social strategy across every sport and then marketing for those. And then, let's see, a couple months ago, I got promoted to vice president. And what came with that was also the oversight of Notre Dame football and Indianapolis 500 and all of IndyCar. So we've always had, or for years have had IndyCar, but the Indy 500 was something that was not part of our broadcast package. So that coming over is huge for us. And essentially, if you look at it, the way it's organized is I handle football and motorsports. And then Olympics is its whole other thing. And then the social part of my role has evolved. The team's grown, but that's still under my purview too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess I've always been amazed by you guys, and obviously full transparency, like we've worked together for quite some time, but for you to jump like from Sunday Night Football and then here comes Winter Olympics and then here comes the NASCAR season, like there probably isn't a perfect answer to this, but how do you attack all those, and how do you decide which takes precedent when all those different balls are kind of up in the air?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I will say February 2018 nearly killed us all. We were literally flying from Minneapolis to South Korea because the Super Bowl was 4 days from the opening ceremony. So it was a test for all of us. I mean, we are used to sports are always on. We are known for making big events bigger. So it's not like we ever have this lull. But that was different. I had done the opposite. I had done a Super Bowl into a Summer Olympics, which is still several months to plan. I think the biggest thing that I try to keep in mind is just prioritizing. Every sport is different. Every partner is different. And I think every sport kind of comes with its positives and negatives. And I think for the most part, it's really focusing on kind of the launch of these events. And so launch of football season, launch of NASCAR season, and then what are the tent poles within it? Because for the most part, some of it is day to day. Some of it is, for football, for example, kickoff this year was in Philadelphia, which was incredible because NBC Universal is owned by Comcast. Comcast has an incredible footprint in Philly. We had the Today Show down there. We had CNBC and Jim Cramer, who's a huge Eagles fan. We have a regional sports network. We have an O&O. So we were super fortunate, but with all of that came a lot more layers of things to do to market the game. And so that really was the focal point in getting that first Sunday night game off the ground, which was Bears Packers, which turned out to be kind of not a great game at halftime. But then you're like, what just happened? Aaron Rodgers is not normal, and has one leg now, but like still manages to win, and it's annoying. But
I mean, I think that was one of the best games I've seen. I mean, I've watched a lot of football. I mean, the last 5 years or so, it's probably one of the best games I've seen. That was pretty good.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And to be honest, last football season, Sunday night football schedule was phenomenal on paper. And we just got hit
injuries. Yeah.
So many injuries. The Sunday night football bus was sort of like the Madden curse, because by the end of the season, so the Sunday night football bus, for folks that don't know, is this bus that we have that's got all this cool stuff inside, that travels to each home market, and we do a bunch of cool stuff. The side of the bus has about 10 to 12 players on it, and I would say 75% of those players by the end of the season were hurt. And that's
so at the end of the season, you have like Brett Hundley versus John Skelton or something crazy.
Yeah, that matchup sounds a lot worse. And so I think that was something we struggled with last season. So for the first game of the season to be with kickoff to be compelling, even with like a rain delay, and that Packers game to end the way it did, like we're starting out in a lot better of a position. But I think to answer your question, the most important thing is like it never slows down. The spring in particular on the sports I actually don't work as closely on. We've got the Kentucky Derby finishing, going into a Stanley Cup final game. Like that is nuts. I think it's just really prioritizing and making sure not every game is created equal, not every event is created equal, but making sure that we can get the right resources onto the right stuff so that we amplify the games and the races and those kinds of things that really matter.
That's awesome. I want to kind of back up and just get like you've been in the game. I mean, you think you've been at NBC. I looked it up, creeped your LinkedIn profile a little bit, but I think 12 years at NBC. So, I mean, you're a wily veteran. Yeah. I know. But it's pretty, I mean, listen, you know more than anybody in this industry, in our industry, people hop around every 2 to 3 years usually so I'm interested for you to stay at one place for that long. That's probably speaks a lot to the culture and your ability to be able to be appreciated. Like talk a little bit about that, of how it works internally.
Yeah. I can't actually believe that I've been in one place for 12 years. Like I'm really not that old. It feels like I'm like about to retire, because only your parents stay somewhere that long. But
I feel like in sports years, it's almost like dog years. Like it's almost like you've been there for 36 years or something.
And it does age you. But I do think for me, it is absolutely culture. I think whenever I was sort of getting that itch of like, I want to take the next step, I want to go on to the next thing, an opportunity either presented itself or I sort of presented the opportunity at NBC Sports. About, 4 years or so into my time at NBC Sports, Comcast acquired NBC Universal. So before that, GE owned it. And so that was like, honestly, a complete shift. It's as if we were at two different companies, to be completely candid. We were based at 30 Rock before.
Yeah, that's right.
Sports only on the weekends. So I was really working primarily I started at NBC a couple years after we acquired the rights to Sunday Night Football and right before the Beijing Olympics in 2008. So I was like on cloud nine, working in sports on these huge events, and like was into it and worked in the communications office. So I was doing like booking talent radio, and I was all over the map. It was sort of like a jack of all trades thing. And then we got acquired in 2009. I actually worked with one other colleague on like starting the Sunday Night Football Facebook page and Twitter account. And, like that, I feel like that happens later, where it's like the kid at the company starts the social account. But
'09, like you were way ahead of the game, because we started STN in 2013 and everybody had pages, but nobody posted any content. Yeah. So some people didn't have Instagram or Twitter or even launched by 2013. So you were ahead of the
game. We were looking at it as like a comms tool. But there was buy-in through our executive producer. And so it was actually pretty cool. But I realized there was something more there. And to be honest, like I didn't want to be a publicist. Like that was not what I was feeling. And so, 4 years into kind of doing my first real job, I I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this? And so I think the timing of the Comcast merger, and my old boss moved to become the president of Golf Channel. And so he was sort of like, what do you want to do in this next iteration? And I was like, oh, I kind of want to like run the social team, which that was myself, and some Twitter accounts. So I didn't really even know what that meant, but he was like, okay, cool. So then that was sort of the second phase of my career, was really starting and growing the social business. Yeah. And I did that until about 2015, 2014 maybe. And then right again, kind of like I've grown this business, I've grown a team. I really like it, but I don't want to be the social girl forever. And that was really, that was happening for sure. Like I was the go-to person at our company, even at our larger NBCU company. And I was like, I don't want to forever run social for some company or like move on somewhere else and do.
Lindsay, how do I attach a video on Twitter for my camera roll? I'm trying to figure out like,
yeah, like can't connect to the, I'm like, that's IT. I don't
yeah,
know.
Exactly.
We couldn't even get Skyped in properly. Like that's how helpful on IT. But yeah, so then it was like right around when I was starting to get a little itchy. Jenny Storms came in as our CMO, kind of reorged us, and promoted me into a larger marketing role. So I think if I take a step back, and like I've changed my job about 3 or 4 times, that could be with 3 or 4 companies. But there is something about working on the Olympics. Pyeongchang was my 6th Olympics. I've worked, I think, 4 Super Bowls. Like if you want to work in sports, it's a pretty great place to work. And I've been able to sort of build what I, see my career path do its thing. And so that really is a testament to the company and the culture, but also the stuff I get to work on. I mean, I think it would be hard for me to leave here and, find something cooler to do. That's not to say I'll be here until I retire, but I think, the actual work and the stuff I get to do is pretty cool.
I want to get your thoughts on just our industry is changing from a linear and data standpoint. And you talked about Comcast a little bit, but we've talked a lot about on this program about AT&T and Time Warner and just all these large conglomerates kind of coming together, really, I think, to battle the OTTs and the data of like a Netflix and Amazon. Do you think, like, as we go forward over the next, 3 to 5 years, is that the right move? To kind of have these larger companies conglomerize and be able to use the content with the data to go head to head with some of these successful OTTs?
I mean, I think these businesses are not stupid. And I think when things are valuable, especially like if, the television landscape is one that I think you're going to see the players that are in it for the long haul start to stand out, and the ones that are still in this world where nothing's changing around them are going to start to fall off.
Yep.
We're very lucky to be owned by Comcast, because Comcast, I mean, if you have the X1 platform, I mean, it's pretty baller. Like they understand how to communicate with their users. They know how to keep people into their ecosystem. Like they are all about data and innovation. And I think having an owner like that helps us as a television company kind of face the facts. Like,
yes,
Comcast is a cable company, it's a media company, but they're also creating their own stuff. They're developing things that otherwise, television networks were the only ones doing it before. So I think that's super beneficial for us. I think, I don't know if I have an opinion either way. I think there's something odd when you've got the same 3 companies sort of owning everything. But at the same time, I think
4 or 5 companies are going to own like almost every TV channel.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, that can be problematic depending on who the owners are. But I think from like a television perspective, I pay attention to sort of this movement and really like the products and stuff that folks are coming out with or acquiring, because I think it's important. Television ratings are definitely down. I'm not convinced yet that it's because of the product on television. I think consumption is not down. So I think we're just at a place where we have to realize, like, we know those 60 plus people are tuning into prime time, and that's phenomenal. But we also know the 18 to 24s are not. but they're consuming an awful lot other places. And so it's on us as marketers to really take a look at that. And like, the sky is not falling yet. That I think there's a lot of sort of a little bit crazy takes out there of like, television is dead. It is not. It is not dead.
No.
But we do have to figure out how to entice younger people to consume sports and figure out how to get sports in front of those people. Because, you know, my daughter's 3 years old. I have YouTube TV. She may never have a cable subscription ever.
She won't. Yeah.
So it's like, that doesn't mean my daughter doesn't watch the Steelers every Sunday with us. So it's like, we do have to start to think about, how do we get our content in front of folks? And I think some of these, you know, conglomerates that are kind of happening, if you pay attention to what they're acquiring, you have a little bit of an idea of like, okay, like this is where they see this industry going, and they're not even content creators.
Yeah.
We should, you know, pay attention more there.
I mean, I think Sunday Night Football's been the #1 highest rated program for over a decade or something. So to your point, the content's there. I've always asked this question. What fascinates me about this industry is how do you have this linear product that's been so amazing, and that's been the main source of revenue, obviously, for the overall company for so long. How do you play in the OTT space and get it to that 18 to 24 without disrupting the monster that is like what the whole foundation's built on? So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on how over the next 5 to 10 years, like how that could be a smooth process rather than a big drop off and then we have to kind of throw everything towards the wall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends too on at least from a sports perspective, like broadcast rights. I mean, these deals are done 10 years at a time. So, you know, no one was thinking about OTT the last time the NFL deal was done. But you do see now, you know, the NFL is also giving digital rights to Amazon and things like that, Twitter at one point. So I think there's a point where for us, we have an OTT product called NBC Sports Gold.
Yep.
And we're sort of, it all really has to kind of depend on the rights that we have and what we can do with those rights, and then negotiate for future rights with this in mind. So NBC Sports Gold has cycling, it has rugby, it has track and field. And I think as we're negotiating new deals, we absolutely are considering, you know, these folks, Premier League is in there too, like folks that really want every single piece of cycling, every single piece of Tour de France, like they should be able to get it because we're not airing everything. But I think with certain deals that we're doing, it wasn't on the table in the deal when we negotiated it. And so then we're thinking about how do we do this for the future?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about, you know, having a really great product with really cool stuff and making money so that we can continue to do more cool stuff.
Yep.
But I think for sure the leagues are thinking about it. A lot of the leagues are actually have their own OTT products. We are the back-end technology for F1, so we decided not to renew our F1 relationship in terms of television. They have their own OTT product that we actually developed for them. So there's kind of all these like behind-the-scenes cyclical things that are happening. But it's certainly something that we are all in with NBC Sports Gold. And then I think as these new deals come up, we have to figure out where that model works and for what sports.
What is, when it comes to social, what have you guys seen as you've dug in, like your core demo and the audience that you're going? You mentioned 18 to 24 earlier, but what's at NBC Sports handles, what's the demo you usually see?
Yeah, so they're all a little bit different. The NBC Sports accounts are primarily like 70% male under the age of, I think, 25. The Olympics channels are actually more female, and that actually mirrors the on-air audience as well. Okay. It's one of our only sports that's more female. Surprisingly, NASCAR is not that far off. It's almost 50-50.
Really?
Which really surprised me because you just do not think of women when you think of NASCAR. But like, especially like the things we can see on Facebook and Twitter, like I think it's like 55-45 or something like that. But which is pretty cool because we do definitely tailor our content a little bit differently, knowing that you have, a young female audience compared to just that young super male audience that we have on most of our channels.
How many accounts, and I kind of know the answer to this question, I wonder if you know off the top of your head, how many accounts under the NBC Sports umbrella? Because you mentioned...
I mean, this is not taking into account like writers, talent, all of that. I think it's around 40.
Yeah.
If you go across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, RIP our Google Plus account. That was a good effort.
Google Plus.
Yeah.
RIP.
But I think it's a little under 40, and that's not talent or writers, some of our digital properties like Pro Football Talk, that kind of thing.
Well, obviously, I know you're amazing people like Andrew, Ryan, Jenna, Kylie, Justin, the whole squad. But with that, like how many people under the team to run all those 40 when you count in maybe vendors and you count in video editors and anybody that kind of helps support that content output?
Yeah. So let's see. We have, I would say all in, including creative, we're probably looking at around 30 people. Our core team is 10 people that are in Stanford, in the office. You know, many of those people you mentioned. The cool thing too about our reorg a few years ago.
Are they all dedicated to social, all 10? Or
yes, yeah, all 10. And then we can add to that a little bit, like folks on my team who are a little bit more on the consumer engagement marketing side, but have at one point actually were on the social team before the reorg. Yeah. So there's a lot of the folks that you guys work with who understand the space, are not responsible anymore for actually publishing to the space, but can come with the ideas and the creative and beef up our day-to-day team a little bit. Right. Because I think that's the toughest part. I mean, there are definitely brands who have really, really robust social teams. And I think you could always make the case for more people, but I think for right now, at least, like we are in a pretty good position based on what we're working with.
How do you decide on strategy? I've always wondered from the network level, but with you guys, I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before, but how do you decide what works on NBC Sports and then what we're going to just keep for Sunday Night Football or just keep for NASCAR and not? Like, is there any type of algorithm or any type of way you guys measure when to post on both accounts potentially?
Yeah, you know what? The NBC Sports accounts, they're a work in progress because, to be honest, the NBC Sports brand overall is not one that we lead with consumer facing wise. Like, I think there are some of other broadcast networks that lead, like their brand, their logo is kind of defines who they are, and then those sub brands kind of spawn off of it.
Turner Sports does something similar. I mean, where they're not consumer facing. Yeah,
exactly. And I think for sure with Turner, Bleacher is their digital voice. So that's something from a social perspective. Way back in the day, this was probably 2006. The NBCSports.com was sort of a offshoot of NBC News. So all of the NBC, it was like basically the sports stories under the news umbrella. The Twitter account and the Facebook page were kind of spawned out of Seattle, where at that time MSN was kind of running all of our content. Mm-hmm. So for years and years and years, these accounts were editorially driven, news driven. Because of the brand, were pretty big. Like they grew to be pretty big. But then when, especially on Facebook, things started to shift and editorial wasn't necessarily moving the needle and content and video really needed to be there, we found that we had a really dormant group of a lot of people. And so we're still in this sort of like, who is NBC Sports on social? Because it's very easy. We've built our social business off of our brands, Sunday Night Football, NHL, NASCAR, Olympics, Premier League. Like, you know the voice, you know what you're getting, you know the audience. And so it really is. I mean, it's something for the past probably about the past 18 months is something where we have this opportunity. We've got, I think, almost 4 million people across all of our social accounts for sports. And we're still trying to figure that out because I think people come to NBC Sports for the sports on NBC. And so there's an opportunity there to talk about the NBA. There's an opportunity to talk about baseball. But we're still trying to figure out what our audience on those accounts want from us because it's crystal clear on football. And so right now, like, we're not in the business of like share everything over there, because
Yeah.
that still doesn't help us understand who these people are. So a lot of times it's sort of these really feel good stories about, players, or like their grandma throwing out the first pitch, or this, the little girl who gets the puck during the playoffs. Like there's those kinds of things we know is a sweet spot for our audience, which I think is a huge opportunity, because in sports right now, the sort of bro culture, very like bro-y stuff is doing really, really well.
Yep.
It is not our brand. It's not going to be our brand.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to know there's white space in the complete opposite direction that we can take advantage of, because it's much more on brand than what some of the other guys are doing. And that's okay. So those are like, that sweet spot seems to be working for us. Really broad storylines seem to be working for us. But it's definitely a work in progress, because our engagement numbers on our other channels are off the charts, and we're getting NBC Sports there. But we also don't really want it to just be the place where you like get the retweet of the Sunday Night Football thing, because what's the point of having just like a retweet factory? So we're getting there, I think, but it's still definitely a work in progress.
Which is, I think, as an industry, everybody's starting to understand, like, you need to program each channel separately to that specific audience, and not just, throw stuff to the wall type deal. I've always wondered this and wanted to get your thoughts. So you mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but I feel like ESPN, for instance, in our industry is always under a microscope. Anything that at ESPN tweets or posts almost comes off like an official press announcement, whether it's politics or what have you. And since you guys are not as consumer facing, maybe you're not under the microscope as much as maybe an ESPN. But how have you guys kind of walked that line on social? Because if you're posting something on at NBC Sports, all of a sudden that can kind of be almost, again, like an official statement coming from the NBC Sports brass. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, we are very cognizant of it. I think, ESPN has built a business for a very long time, a very legitimate business, as a go-to place for sports fans. And so a lot of times that is definitely, they are under the microscope, probably unfairly at times.
Yeah.
We all know, like, people can definitely have a misspelling, and does not mean the intern that's running your account, because interns run your accounts, but that doesn't mean like doomsday. But I will say, like, we are absolutely under the microscope around our big events. There is a serious level, like game-changing level with the Olympics. Everybody is an expert with the Olympics. Everybody is weighing in on what we should and shouldn't do with our programming. So we definitely feel it, maybe not in the sports generalist landscape, but same with Sunday Night Football, having the number one show in prime time for 7 years in a landscape where ratings are declining is incredibly tough to do. And so when you are good at that, you definitely have people on your back. But I think we are probably, sometimes to a detriment, incredibly cognizant and cautious of what we are putting out there.
You have to be. I understand that, yeah.
We pay a lot of money for sports rights, and I think
you have to protect your asset.
Get jealous of, absolutely. And sometimes I get jealous of what Bleacher and Barstool can do, because it's like, God, that is funny. Or like, man, they went for it. Or like they went for Eli Manning, or they went for Aaron Rodgers. We could never do that. But our social business is a part of our larger business. And I think the better safe than sorry, not putting out something on, Veterans Day to get those clicks when you've offended a veteran. It's like, what exactly are you weighing in? You see it all the time. Like, a lot of these things they're unnecessary, and you can be a part of a conversation that makes sense for your brand. Mistakes are definitely going to happen, and oftentimes they are unintentional, but I think we are very, pretty good about making sure that our folks know the line and know that we are part of a larger company, and that, irritating or getting an interview turned down by a player because we put out a funny meme is not going to go over well. And I think that's just something that we have to balance, having a lot of these like real relationships versus some brands who have crazy engagement that don't have any of these actual business relationships across the leagues.
It's a lot tougher, than I think people make it out to be. I remember, just like industry talk, kind of more inside baseball, but Bill Simmons criticize Roger Goodell on Dan Patrick's show, and he got suspended by ESPN because they're in business with Roger Goodell in the NFL. I've always wondered, but then Charles Barkley can say David Stern's a knucklehead, and that doesn't affect their relationship. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I've always wondered, like, does that, it must, but does it ever get to the point where when they're sitting down at the table for media rights that Roger Goodell is kind of irked because your talent talks crap about me on First Take or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm sure that has to be a part of it.
I mean, I think every brand, I think it's all kind of how you manage it. I think talent is an interesting one because talent are paid to give their opinions. And I think there are definitely opinions. We have talent on the air right now who have, with rule changes, and this isn't just the NFL, but like with rule changes or organization changes or leadership changes, like we pay them to give their opinion, and it's not authentic to the fans if we're just drinking the Kool-Aid with every league and every team. Like that's not authentic either. I think that, that's generally managed if the commissioner from any league gives, our chairman a call, it's how they handle it, kind of is on them. I think where on the social front, it's a little more black and white is, Sunday Night Football on NBC, NHL on NBC. These are brand accounts. And so that's where I think we are representing the brand. It's not our own personal opinion when we put tweets out there. And we have to remember that, there could be, some kind of really awesome poll that we put out that makes fans think that like, this is how we feel about this field or this is how we feel about this track. And like, it's not how we feel because you've got 10 people behind the scenes who have completely different favorite teams.
Exactly.
All of that. And so oftentimes we leave the opinions to our talent, and we're not scared to put out, if one of our talent has a hot take on one of our studio shows, like we're not scared to put that out there. But we have to make sure we're balancing, like, this is not someone behind the scenes that's the thumbs behind the Sunday Night Football account's opinion on X. This is either a writer, a journalist, Peter King, our talent. That's their opinion, and we kind of make that super clear because it definitely gets murky with kind of who. And I think especially in our world, like, you've got a lot of folks who run social accounts who like respond from their personal accounts to like people trolling your brand accounts. They're like, nobody cares that you're behind this, like at all. Yeah. And some folks like really do care. Like they want you to know that they're the people behind the accounts. We just don't take that position because it's just not who we are.
That's the thing. I just think like if for whatever reason, Jenna decided to make a snarky comment on SNF account. It almost as if like some people take that as if the chairman of NBC is saying this, and it's just weird how people think that way. But we have to understand that like these social accounts have a lot more reach and are touching people much more than any press release, any write up in the Wall Street Journal type stuff. So I think we're all understanding that. To that point, what Turner's done with Bleacher Report, and I want to talk to you about On Her Turf as well because I think it's an amazing idea. If you made an account called @footballstuff, and you were able to kind of do more of that fun stuff and the bro stuff or what have you, since it doesn't have NBC in its name, does that give you more leeway? Or at the end of the day, the chairman and the partner is going to know, hey, that's an NBC account, that's not cool type deal?
Yeah, we actually just had this conversation the other day. I think there's some cool sort of like sub verticals that are popping about. On Her Turf is one, which we can talk about. Yeah. That's really, we think about it all the time. And I think, yes, like even like I was taking a look the other day at Fox has the Thursday Night Football package this year, and what Fox Sports does around football and what NFL on Fox does around football oftentimes are very different. Like the Fox Sports account will take some digs. They'll kind of go there. And again, it's just not our brand, so it's not going to be us. But I've always been interested because that's clearly Fox Sports. It's not a sub brand. I've always been interested to think of like, are they getting a call from the league if they don't like something? I don't know because it's got it doesn't have the shield on it. It's not the NFL account. But I do think, I don't know, we've thought about, I still think like our overall brand is positive. It's about the fan. It's about like, I just don't know, even if it was a sub brand, that we would still be that sort of bro culture taking digs at people. I think the the flip side of that would be if we did find value in acquiring a sub brand like that, would we put our peacock fingerprints all over it and try to change it? I don't think so. I think if
Just
there's
let
a
it be,
valuable, like I think if there's a valuable asset out there that maybe pushes the envelope and reaches the young male demo, and we find value in that, I think that would be something that would be pretty cool. But I don't know. I think we try to stay in this like positive everyman vibe. And I think it would be hard to separate out the peacock from stuff. I think one really good example actually is the Roto World franchise is owned by NBC Sports.
And you don't really think of NBC when it's
you
true.
Don't. And I don't know that we don't overly brand it either as like people go to Roto World for fantasy news. It powers a lot of sites. Like it makes money for us. It doesn't need peacocks everywhere for you to know. They're also not going after, partners or anything, but we have fantasy experts who have opinions on players. Like, I think that's one example where we do have this sub brand that is honest and opinionated. That's worked in our favor as well.
And I've always, Jenny Storm too, coming from Pepsi, like Pepsi is also, I think, Naked Juice or, Mountain Dew. Like there's no reason to put the Pepsi logo. Yeah, there's no reason to put the Pepsi logo on every product and kind of let that have its own marketing plan, its own, demographic, things like that. So let's talk about On Her Turf. This was something you guys released prior to the football season going after females, obviously, as your main demo.
Yeah, exactly. So we launched it as if we had nothing else to do the second week of the Olympics or like the second day of the Olympics or something. It was like, again, how I survived.
I feel like that whole month for you is like a blur. You blacked out.
I completely blacked out. But so basically it was launched as an Instagram account On Her Turf, really designed for women being their best selves on and off the field. And we partnered with Refinery 29, which is a very female focused, I would say progressive, young. They hit topics head on that are challenging women. And we did that strategically. We didn't want this to be, the lady version of the sports accounts. Like that is not what this is. As a female sports fan, I don't need pink stuff. I don't need dumbed down news. Like I get it. But we did think we did a ton of data research with Shareably on like the real goal of this was we felt like there was an opportunity on Instagram to have a sub brand. And we sort of tossed out there, what is the white space? A few different things came back like surfing and esports and then women in sports with sort of this more raw angle. Because right now it's really personal brands. It's women who are into fitness or Peloton or great motivational speakers. It's a lot of personal brands, but not a lot of larger brands.
Yeah, so you're right.
That's how On Her Turf started as an Instagram account. And that went through, that still exists. We're growing at a really rapid pace, which is great. But what we definitely did not want to do was have this be an Instagram account. Period, because it's more than that. It's really, it's sort of this mantra. It's an overarching brand. And so since then, we've launched this week, actually, a podcast with Catherine Tappan, who hosts our NHL coverage. She's on our Notre Dame coverage. She's wonderful. She was a college athlete as well. Her first two guests on the podcast are Annika Sorenstam and Kim Pagula, who's the owner of the Bills and the Sabres. So really the podcast is about hearing from women, all through sports. We've got, I think, Sydney LaRue is going to be on the show at some point. Abby Wambach's going to be on the show at some point. So we've got all these women from different ages, different sports, different pieces of where they work in sports. So that's exciting. And then we also launched a 17-week video series called Football is Female, which is distributed across our social channels, sports, Sunday Night Football, YouTube, NBCSports.com, where it's really focusing on women in football at all different levels. So our first two episodes with that one was Michelle Tafoya, obviously, who is our female face for Sunday Night Football, but then Charlotte Jones-Anderson, who is Jerry Jones's daughter, chief brand officer at the Cowboys. We're interviewing the sideline reporter from the Detroit Lions this week. We've got the assistant athletic trainer at the Steelers. So not just executives. It's literally could be the biggest fan club in New England is actually run by a woman, like that kind of stuff. Like we don't want it to be like we came out the gate hot with Michelle and Charlotte, like they are tip top. But that's not, we want to hear from all different women, and we're aligning it with Sunday Night Football. So we have our own extra promotional arm. So each woman that you hear from is going to be, from the city that's on Sunday night that week. So we have that like kind of extra lift from a promotional standpoint. But awesome. I mean, this is like a passion project for sure. This was something Jenny Storms and I were sort of ideating about late last year. And we both, it's sort of a space we both were like, and we're very different sports fans. We're very different women. We're like, there's a gap. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to go necessarily to, ESPNW for my women's sports news. There's something missing there. Yeah. And so it's been great. We have interest from sponsors, which is always good. It always helps you keep things like this moving along. But we had a pop-up at kickoff where people could actually come in. Yeah, it was awesome. Like, we're just being crazy now. But I do think it's cool. How long we'll have it, it's, TBD, but I think we've launched it in a really authentic way. And definitely for anybody that listens to the podcast, if you like it and you think it's cool, like, we appreciate the feedback because it's definitely in its infancy.
Right. Well, with all these investments that you guys are making on your team, and with all these different accounts and on her turf, obviously the goal, I think, ultimately is to program these different franchises that can be, sold for sponsorship. So now that you definitely oversee that and you're in those talks, as we sit here like in 2018, are we going to be in a situation where there's a presenting sponsor for On Her Turf brand for $5 million? Like, as we continue to grow, is that the pie in the sky or the ultimate goal for social to be bringing in some serious revenue in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's anything, not just social. I mean, I think the more money you're able to bring in, the more opportunities you have to do some cool, innovative stuff. And I think, absolutely, I think social is an area that there's a lot of really good content. There's a lot of big, fluffy metrics that comes with it, and it should be valuable. I think we're a little bit at the disposal of each social network in terms of their ad products and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I do think, yeah, absolutely. It's like anything else that we do. We want to try to monetize it. We want to try to get it in front of the right people. Because like I said, the more money we can make on this stuff in an authentic way, and I don't mean, we're slapping logos on. Exactly. Like anybody that works in this space knows when you start slapping logos on stuff and making things that look like an ad, like, people on social media are not stupid. Yeah, they tune out, and they also don't have to follow you. Like, that's something we think about all the time. Like, I really don't want a sponsored post to be the reason, 100 people unfollow us. So I think there's a delicate balance there, but I do think it has a huge opportunity to be a revenue driver for companies. It's just, how do we do that in an authentic way so that we're not also turning off these people that we've aggregated that kind of trust us, giving them cool content.
Yep. All right. So I know I got to get you out of here. I want to do some rapid fire questions here to get us out. What is the one social or marketing tool that you could not live without?
One social or marketing tool. I've been like coming around a lot to CrowdTangle.
Yeah, me too.
I think that helps me not being as in the weeds as I once was, really understanding how our content is performing. And Justin, our director of socials, like, set me up, and I feel like an old person. Sometimes I'm like, I used to be able to like set up stuff on my own, and like now I don't have any clue. But I think CrowdTangle has really helped me just keep an eye on everything and also check on our competitors and that kind of thing.
How do you see marketing and social change in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think marketing is definitely going to be one of those things that brands are going to have to start to think outside of the box and not just go back. I think in sports, we're forced to do this because we've got the same, we've got Sunday Night Football every year, but how we're promoting it, what's happened to the teams and all of that. Sports, you're forced to turn on a dime and not get too comfortable. So I think that's going to probably go outside of just sports for marketers in general. Like, if you've been doing the same stuff for 4 years and you're not seeing any return on your investment, like stop doing it. And so I think that's something where brands are going to definitely be focused on mobile. They're going to be focused on younger people. And if they're not, they're just going to end up getting left behind and become not relevant.
From a business perspective for you guys, what social platform seems to be working the best for you right now?
I think best is a tough one because I think Facebook, we still see tremendous reach. I think we've diversified our content distribution so that Facebook isn't as much of front and center as it used to be, but we do still really reach a ton of people, especially around NASCAR and football. I think our audience is pretty ripe there. I also think we've seen a lot of success on Instagram of just really completely rethinking what we're doing. It is certainly a platform where you can't just take one thing and slap it on Instagram. And so Instagram stories have been great for us. It's been a really fun way to also kind of test out driving people to monetizable assets. So I would say Facebook is still the way that we reach in mass, but Instagram is one where we're keeping an eye on just like this new, much, much younger audience for us.
Yep. All right. In our industry, FOMO is a major, major problem, I think, because everything moves so fast. So what's the one thing you would recommend that all social media and marketers either read or subscribe to make sure, or what do you use just kind of make sure you're staying on top of your game?
I try also to get out of like the sports stuff.
I hear that a lot.
I really I'm like over the top into the podcast. I need to like get out of the political podcast space a little bit, but I actually think podcasting is a really interesting way to like learn kind of what was a super old medium and like how they market other podcasts and stuff. So I've been trying to like think outside the sports bubble. The other thing I would say is subscribing and paying attention to your email. Like I have so many things that I do not care about that come through my Gmail, but this is sort of a broad answer. It's not like a book or a website, but like, why am I clicking on the ones that I am? And like, what is it about the email that's from a sponsor or a brand that I'm opening? Because I think that's another really interesting one that's not social, but email is like, you are all up in people's every day. And like the people that do it well, a lot of like retail does it really, really well, where I'm like, why did I click on this? And how do
can
I
use that for
that?
maybe, replicate
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Like that's one where like your email, you're in it. And if you're allowing people into your inbox, there's something they're doing right. And so that's another one where I just like, I pay attention now more to my Gmail. That's so random, but like I do, to try to take those lessons on.
No, I'll forward emails to my sales team sometimes. If I see another person trying to sell me, and it's just like, it works well. I'm like, this is actually pretty smart. I tell this guy,
the opposite, where you're like, that really irritated me.
Yeah, exactly. Never do this, please.
To unsubscribe, and it's really bad.
All right. Any advice for anyone striving to be in your shoes one day, kind of a VP at a large sports network? What would be your main piece of advice?
Yeah, I think what I'm noticing with the kids, and like full disclosure, I am a millennial, and I just found that out a couple years ago, and I didn't understand how it could be possible.
I think 30. What is it? What is it now? If you were born in 85 or after, or I don't know, something.
It's 80. It's 82.
82.
Or 83. So the one thing I will say is that there is something to the first couple of years of your job of digging in and doing work that you might feel like you're above, but learning and bouncing around. And you don't have to be at the same company for 12 years, but I think it's really important to sort of roll up your sleeves and do the dirty work early. Yes. Because regardless of whether or not there's this sort of millennial mentality that people talk about all the time, like your bosses and bosses are old school. And I think hard work and putting in the time and coming in early and staying late in those early years before you do know everything, I think still resonates with the people that are making the decisions about sort of your growth in your career. Because like you said earlier on the podcast, like folks jump around, and I think that's awesome. And I actually think it gives you a lot of opportunity that, our parents didn't have. But at the same time, I think good old fashioned hard work and putting your head down early in your career is actually still really, really important to get in there so you can kind of grow at a quicker pace than some other folks.
Yeah, I think there's maybe the old school mentality was if you did this, this, and this, you automatically ascend. But to like what your career, it's like, hey guys, this social thing's like really important. What if I became the head of that and kind of made sure we stayed on top of it? Like, Lindsay, that's a great idea. Now you're the head of. I mean, you found your niche, and you're like, guys, like, and literally positions were being created because of that. And I think that's a great piece of advice. All right, so I'll get you out of here. I know we're a little late. Sure. I'm going to see you in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the Real Time Summit.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're on a panel together, so, and I'm looking forward to your speech too.
We're on the panel. I'm the keynote at 8:15.
You got to prepare. You better get ready.
On the first day. So it's either going to be like packed because people are going to be chomping at the bit, or like who is showing up to this keynote at 8:15. But
I'll be there. I'll be there for you. I got you, front row.
Yeah, please, front row. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for the time. This was great. It's like the podcast allows us. We probably would never sit down for an hour and just talk like this. So this is cool, man. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks,
guys.
Talk
soon. Later.
Bye.
Lyndsay Signor, I'm so excited and so happy that we were able to sit down and just talk about the industry. That was some really good stuff. I love her thoughts on how she approaches marketing and social, and how she understands the change in our industry, and you have to realize that, how are we going to change, and how are we going to make sure that we're going to stay at top of the industry and get towards the fan. I also feel like what she said about, if you're doing the same thing for the last 4 years that doesn't resonate with your fan base or isn't returning an investment, stop doing that thing. Like, it's so true. And I think, especially in linear, there's a lot of folks out there that just are doing the same thing over and over again because that's the way it's always been done. But to have that wherewithal to understand that we have to change with the market, we have to try new things. I mean, the On Her Turf thing is an incredible way to, let's try it. Let's have this female-focused brand on Instagram. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if we can fill this niche that we think desperately needs to be filled. So always respected her, and again, it was so fun to catch up with her on all these different things, not only in the industry, but day-to-day over at NBC, how she kind of approaches it and how she attacks it. So excited for that. She is going to be at the Real Time Summit. We're going to be over there at the Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we'll be able to talk some more on that. And it's always a pleasure for you guys. We have some cool podcasts if you haven't had a chance to check out. Brian Pettigrew, the CMO of Breeders' Cup. We really dug into marketing and how he approaches it. I thought that was super valuable. Samantha Wood over at the reigning world champs Philadelphia Eagles. MMA, the VP of Turner Sports. So if you really like this one, Lindsay being the VP of NBC Sports, they had a lot of the same theories and thoughts, and just both really smart women working in our space. So as always, want to thank Auntie Lightning, David Furker, and Sam Howard for all their help on the show. This has been another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by SCN Digital.